Hiya, weirdos. It's Thursday again. I'm Mackenzie, and as always, I'm joined by...
I'm Chris.
And I'm Sarah.
And this podcast is for weirdos.
What are we talking about?
Okay, so today I wanted to go kind of back to basics in a way. And we're going to talk about ghosts, types of hauntings, variations in spirits, if you will. One of our listeners had given us some feedback of like, hey, just like what's like a rundown?
Talk to me about ghosts.
Talk to me about ghosts. And so I thought, since we've talked about some kind of larger scale, more niche paranormal stuff, it might be good to do a refresh on.
We've talked about how to talk to ghosts a couple of times, a couple of haunted locations. Now we're going to tell you just about ghosts.
We've talked about some really, high, strange, cryptid stuff, like some UFO shit. So...
Yeah, Mothman happened. So now let's talk about just regular ass
just
ghosts.
talk about
Regular ghosts.
I have a definition. So, what is a ghost? Oh, sorry. First, tell me.
What we
your
know about
thoughts
ghosts.
Tell me about ghosts.
About types of hauntings.
How you feel like what you know, what
I'll
you don't know.
go first because Chris is chewing. So, I know, what we learn on paranormal television about different types of hauntings. I know about like that there's like residual hauntings, there's intelligent hauntings, and then like amongst that there's like, are shadow figures a separate kind of entity? Are apparitions, are there different kinds of apparitions? Like there's so much different theory that I've just been like, it's all ghosts, and that's kind of where I have settled because it's so much to think about that I'm like, it's all ghosts.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's like EMF where I was like, I don't know how this works. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need to think about it too hard, which is why you guys are here, so I don't have
Thanks.
Yeah. Each one of us can think of one thing really, really hard, and nobody else does think about it.
to. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Go us.
Ghosts for me, I normally just lump everything that is weird and that I cannot see into ghosts,
Okay.
pretty much. But I generally think that ghosts were things that were alive.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily people.
Okay.
But, like, I think Bigfoot is a ghost.
Vibes.
Right. And we talked
But-
about Nessie maybe being a ghost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nessie could be ghosts. And, like, so, like, things can be ghosts, but...
Cool.
Yep.
Do you think physical, like, buildings can be ghosts? Do you think there could be a ghost of the building, or does it have to be a living thing?
I don't know. I mean, there's ghost ships.
Oh, good point. You don't believe in those.
I don't not believe in them.
Okay.
I just think I think that we
Do
can.
you think there's another explanation?
I think there most of the time there's another explanation.
Yeah. And we did talk about that already.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to us,
All right.
Mackenzie.
So, in folklore, a ghost is the soul or spirit of a dead person or non-human animal that is believed to be able to appear to the living. In ghost lore, descriptions of ghosts vary widely from an invisible presence to translucent or barely visible wispy shapes to realistic lifelike forms. The deliberate attempt to contact the spirit of a deceased person is known as necromancy, or in spirituism as a seance. Or spiritism, not spirituism. Other terms associated with the term ghost are apparition, haunt, haint, phantom, poltergeist, shade, specter, spirit, spook, wraith, demon, and ghoul. All right. So,
Hold on.
go ahead.
We're
necromancers.
necromancers?
Technically, the verb or whatever necromancy as an activity
Uh-huh.
Is what
Or-
we're doing.
originated as a way to talk to spirits, not as a way to raise the dead, but to talk to spirits.
Oh my God, we're necromancers. Are we
Um,
necromancers
so-
or are we dancer?
So, a lot of people tie ghosts. You know, people are like, well, why would we have ghosts? A
Right.
lot of it has to do with religion.
Right.
In
Mhm.
some ancient religion, any kind of spiritual belief in an afterlife.
Right.
Belief in an afterlife is how we have ghosts. Yes.
So I'm going to say this for two reasons. One, because it's really interesting. And two, so that way Brian knows the episode is coming at some point. I was given a book called The First Ghosts. And
Yes.
that's like what it talks about is like where the whole point of that book, or is it First Ghosts or Ancient Ghosts?
I think it's first
think it's
ghost.
First Ghosts. It is about the origin of the concept of a spirit.
Yeah.
And like when we first get the concept of like a ghost, and not just that of like when it haunts, like where we get hauntings. And it's so cool, but it's a
God,
hard
that's
read.
hot.
So that's going to be like a couple months from now, but you're going to get it. And that's like the thing is like the whole
Yeah.
thing is like, when do we have religion? That's when we start having ghosts.
So, and I'm using religion as a not just Christian religion. I'm talking ancient
Right,
religion.
like
I'm
spiritual
talking,
belief.
Yeah, any kind of spiritual belief that has to do with an afterlife is where ghosts come from.
Makes sense.
So the belief in the existence of an afterlife, as well as manifestations of the spirits of the dead, is widespread, dating back to animism or ancestor worship in pre-literature cultures or pre-literate cultures. Certain religious practices, funeral rites, exorcisms, and some practices of spiritualism and ritual magic are specifically designed to rest the spirits of the dead. Ghosts are generally described as solitary, human-like essences, though stories of ghostly armies and the ghosts of animals other than humans have also been recounted. They are believed to haunt particular locations, objects, or people they were associated with in life. And according to a 2009 study by the Pew Research Center, 18% of Americans say they have seen a ghost.
Wow.
Right.
So I would say a lot of times you hear of like, you know, why are they haunting? Well, there's something they have to resolve in
Right.
their life, right?
Right.
They're
Mhm.
They have,
They've-
they have
unfinished business.
There we go.
Is the like standard like line is a ghost is because somebody has unfinished business with the land of the living. And that's not necessarily true. Well, that's not fair. It's not necessarily the only reason. I will say that. I think sometimes there's cases of people believing a ghost is not trapped, but people that don't realize they've died. So they're continuing on with their life because they don't know that they're dead. I'll get into this more with kind of the specific breakdown, but the trauma of how they've died can prevent them from moving on. You know, there's various reasons, and because paranormal stuff is considered a pseudoscience. It's hard to, and we can't. Speaking to ghosts is very, like talking to spirits is very hard to nail down.
Yeah,
Y-
it's
it,
not.
like,
It's not a guarantee.
It's not a guarantee, and it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to substantiate or confirm what you're being told, right? What you're asking for or what you're trying to do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, we're going to talk about kind of 5 different variations of hauntings.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah.
This is such a. I love this topic.
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to start with is residual hauntings because I think it's
The
the
best.
easiest for people to like stomach. Does
Right.
That, like,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's probably the most common type of haunting somebody's going to run into.
Right.
Mhm.
Almost always you're gonna run into a residual haunting before you're gonna run into like an intelligent spirit.
Especially if you're in like a real old fucking building that's been
Yeah.
the same old fucking building for its whole life. Like
Yeah.
You're gonna run into
you're
a
gonna
residual.
get residual haunts there.
So residual hauntings are also called place memories.
I've never heard them called that before,
I've
and I
never heard
love
either.
that.
I like it.
And
makes sense for what they are.
sometimes it can be there's a couple different reasons people think a residual haunting takes place.
Right.
One, it's either like a traumatic or stressful event for that spirit.
Okay.
Another reason is it could be, like I said, kind of doesn't realize you've died, but in a different way. The main thing about a residual haunting is it's repetitive, like a looping movie or reel. It's repeating the same activity over and over again.
It's a time loop.
It's a time loop. Which with EMFs, like we, I don't know when this is going to come out, but we have talked about or will talk about.
The radiation,
the radiation of that, the mathematical of like time and position.
Right.
The biggest thing with a residual haunting is it will not interact with the observer.
Right.
You
can't get it to talk to
anything.
you.
No.
Can't. They're not going to talk to you. A lot of times it's like sounds, scenes, or sensations. So
Right.
you're going to hear in the lobby of a hotel, you hear a party over and over again.
Yeah.
Glasses, and let's say it's the bar of the hotel and it's shut down for the night, but you're hearing party music and glasses clinking and people chattering. That's a residual haunting.
Right. Like footsteps a lot of times.
Footsteps.
Are a residual haunt.
Yeah. We talked about Ghosts of the Alamo. That's a lot of those are residual hauntings, which is what we talked about.
Right.
The unfortunate dad and son jumping.
Yeah.
That is a residual. That's a traumatic or stressful response, and it's imprinted in that.
Right.
So the imprint theory, which I think this is something we're also going to talk about more on, so I'm going to just kind of like gloss over it. A lot of people say that residual hauntings are caused in tandem with the stone tape theory, which is a very prevalent paranormal research theory. And the definition of the stone tape theory is a pseudoscientific claim that ghosts and hauntings occur when historical information is released from rocks and other items. And we're going to have a whole episode on it, I'm sure, in the future. So I'm just going to like leave it.
Yeah. That's what you're getting for today, because we are going to talk about that later. Yeah. By we, I mean Chris.
Yep, I'm talking about it.
So with the stone tape theory, some people say residual hauntings could be caused by a specific date, weather conditions, locations, or the emotional state of the observer. So, like Gettysburg or other battlefields, because battlefields are a really common residual haunting site.
Yeah.
Right. Like the stuff at the Alamo always, like
Yeah.
I said in my
The
episode,
closer it gets to
picks up near the anniversary.
So Gettysburg, the Alamo, the closer you are to the anniversary of an event, the more likely that residual stuff is going to pop up. Weather conditions, let's say sometimes ladies in white in a hotel when it's stormy outside and they think they've because they lost their lover when it was a storm and they were told they were lost at sea, so they CW committed suicide, like content warning suicide. Like they say they committed suicide because they thought they lost their love at sea. So you tend to see them when there's a big storm, or
God, women in white are
just everywhere. So emotional states of observers. Let's say like this was on a Ghost Adventures episode that they did in Vegas. I think it was the Rat Pack, if I remember correctly.
I don't know, girl.
They were in the same hotel room that Frank Sinatra would do all of his like Rat Pack stuff.
Got it.
Oh, that's fun.
And they mimicked the situations, like they basically
Recreated that.
recreated a party scene and when they stopped everything, they got residual. Basically, the party kept going. Like the residual haunt picked up because of the experiment. Because they set the
They
state.
set the intention in the room.
Yeah.
of what that would have been.
So it kind of triggered that residual
Right.
haunt. The other thing that often will cause a residual haunt to pick back up sometimes, or will confuse people about a residual haunt, is buildings that are being remodeled or have been remodeled. It stirs the energy up a little bit, so people are like,
Right.
"Oh, I saw this ghost run through the wall," and they like they were walking upstairs, but they just walked through the wall. Likely, if you look at old plans and it's a building that's
There
been
was a door
remodeled,
there.
There was a door there.
Uh-huh.
So they're doing is going upstairs. Like, if you're looking at the building as it was
Mm-hmm.
at the time of whatever this haunting was, they're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah. They're not being weird. Ghosts aren't being weird
So
when they're residual.
I personally think residual hauntings occur the most frequently in liminal spaces. So residual hauntings are super commonly so.
Do you want to explain what liminal spaces are? I don't think we've
Liminality?
talked about that.
I will look
We've
up the
danced
definition.
around it.
I will look up. Let me look up the definition of liminality real quick.
Okay.
I will. Let me finish my thought, and then
Yeah.
I will. Or you will.
I can
somebody
look it up for you.
'Cause I was
Finish
like,
your thought. Sorry.
So
I just realized we haven't actually talked about that. And
yeah.
This is a good point
So
in which to do that.
liminal spaces, the generic definition is usually a between place. Is the easiest way like to describe it.
Give us some examples.
I will. So when we talked about Waverly Hills, it's a hospital. They call it a sanatorium. It's also just another. It's another. That's an old term for a hospital.
Right.
Hospitals are. You're never at a hospital with the intent to be there forever. You're not making it a home. It's not, somewhere. It's a come and go place. The people that are there are not there permanently. Those kinds of things. So hospitals, people will talk about hearing, especially abandoned hospitals. They'll be like, oh, I hear in Waverly Hills, you said people hear coughing. Well, it was a TB hospital. Of course they hear coughing.
Yeah, like coughing and labored breathing.
Coughing and labored breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what you would have heard in the heyday of that
Right.
that space. In a normal hospital, people say they hear the squeaking of like a gurney.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really common one that people will hear.
Or like the beeping of a heart
The
monitor.
beeping of a heart monitor. If it's a more modern haunted hospital, like the triggering of an automatic door,
Yeah,
the sound. All of those are very common residual hauntings where it's not going to interact with you. It's not there to hurt you. It's just going about its business.
Right.
Jails are also a really common residual haunting. You're going to
because
hear
they're also a liminal space.
because they're also a liminal space. You're going to hear arguing or people banging on cell doors or guards walking around and like the running of a baton and depending on the age of the prison. If you're in solitary, you're going to hear people talking to themselves,
Crying.
or crying, screams, like things like that are very common. The sounds and sensations. People that say they feel somebody watching them in a jail. Well, of course somebody's watching you. Prisoners are there. What else is a liminal space? Jails, hospitals. I had another one in my head.
Hotels.
Hotels are a very liminal space. So
Schools.
churches can be.
I think of a liminal space. So I have a definition of liminal here, but when I think of like liminal spaces specifically, I'm thinking of a place that is not your destination.
Yes.
Like it's not a place that you go to. It's a place that you're at for some other reason,
Yeah.
usually. Like you're not there to be there.
Yeah.
Like you don't go to a hotel usually because you are going to hang out in a hotel all day.
Right.
You are in a hotel because you're going to
Somewhere
do
else.
something in that town. A
Uh-huh.
hotel or a hospital, you're going there because it'll make you better and then you're going to go back home. Like you're
Yeah.
not going to the hospital because you need to be at the you're going to the hospital. You're going to the hospital because you're sick.
Yeah.
And like prison, nobody wants to be there. That kind of thing. And like schools are like an iffy one because schools are liminal not because of the physical space, but because of the people at
Yeah.
Because-
schools.
because
Our
of-
children are liminal.
Well, and not
Well,
only
it's
that, a
also-
school
it's-
is a constant turnover. There's,
Right.
It's
Yeah,
like
'cause-
teachers may stay for a long time, but you're aging out and bringing in new people constantly.
Yeah, and so it's that constant cycle. And
So-
even like at college, like
College
the
is
dorms,
a very liminal. Dorms
Dorms are liminal.
Yeah.
They're liminal fucking spaces.
So
It's
do you
spooky.
want to hit a quick definition of liminal?
Yeah, hit
Okay.
me with it.
So there's two on here. This is Merriam-Webster. We've got of or relating to or situated at a sensory threshold, barely perceptible or capable of eliciting a response. So that's like something that you can barely see or barely hear. It could be like a liminal sound or a liminal sight. And then we have the one that we use more frequently is of or relating to or being an intermediate or blah, 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 of or relating to being an intermediate state, phase, or condition in between transitional.
Yeah.
So like that's what when we're talking about liminality, that's specifically what we're referencing. But what's really interesting is that first definition means that ghosts are liminal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of cool.
and other places, I like the phrase place memories for residual hauntings for the especially when you're talking about liminality. And let me be clear, as we're going through these types of hauntings, multiple types of these spirits or hauntings or whatever we want to call that can exist in the same place.
Right.
You can have 17 different versions of a residual haunting, and they may not have anything to do with each other.
And you could have liminal hauntings and residual hauntings and non-residual hauntings in the same location at the same time. Like
Yeah.
you could be experiencing both.
Yeah.
Like you could be experiencing a knocking sound, and the first time you hear it, it's
residual.
It's residual, and then you end up getting a different, slightly different knocking sound,
Yeah.
or in a different area that is responding to you, which means it's not residual.
So like, not saying this isn't necessarily something that I can substantiate, but let's talk about in Galveston, a really easy residual haunting that could exist. If we're talking about like a time frame or a weather conditions type of residual haunting, I tend to think if there was a time that spiritual activity was going to pick up like on the island, it's going to be around the anniversary of the 1900 storm.
I was just going to say during hurricanes in general.
And hurricane season in general. Like I think there tends to be a trend upwards and in spiritual activity that you can actually like catch on camera. And Galveston's haunted as shit, let's be very clear.
Have you heard about the Jean Lafitte's dogs around hurricanes?
Yes.
Like
They
that's
bark.
a residual
Yeah.
haunting
Yeah.
because you can't interact with them. They don't interact with people. They
No.
just appear when hurricanes are coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other big liminal space, in my opinion, is that we tend to have a lot. I mentioned the battlefields earlier as a residual haunt. That tends to be a very liminal space, especially places like places that are also a historic site.
Right.
So, and what I mean by that is a living history site. So Gettysburg, Williamsburg, Yorktown,
I'd agree with
places
that.
where there were
they're-
battles
they're-
and people are still imitating life in that time.
Right. And I think that battlefields are liminal in a different way than I think hotels
Yeah.
and prisons are liminal. It's because it's a transitionary place where
Yeah.
a lot of people died.
Yeah.
Right. So like sites of natural disasters in that same way
Same way.
could be really liminal spaces because it's that like state of being in between, right? And
Right.
and that's why I think living history sites are that way, is because
Yeah.
it's like I'm a modern person, but I am doing living history, meaning I'm like recreating
Yeah.
the past and doing it exactly how they would have done it back then. It is that weird in between of being now and then that
Yeah.
creates liminality in a space that wouldn't necessarily be liminal otherwise. Because I don't think all historic places necessarily are.
No.
But like those living history sites,
But
that
like
100%.
places where you're maintaining what life would have been when that transitionary activity happened
Yeah.
sets the intent and the energy for a residual haunting to be
Present.
We're all about intent.
So
Not
I
hard.
want to talk briefly about psychopomps.
Oh.
So the definition of a psychopomp
Chris
is
really excited.
it says psychopomps are spiritual beings or entities often found in various mythologies, religions, and folklore around the world. The term psychopomp originates from the Greek word psyche, meaning soul, and pompos, meaning guide or conductor. In essence, psychopomps are guides or escorts for the souls of the deceased, helping them navigate the afterlife or the transition from life to death. So, in my opinion, I kind of did like a big three. There's a ton of them.
Right.
I did not have time to research every existing.
You could do a whole
psychopomp.
episode just on that.
and
Yeah.
somebody might.
right,
That's an easy enough one to add to the list.
right.
The big 3 examples that I went with were Anubis, because his entire mythology is the transition.
Between life and death.
He
Mhm.
navigates the waterway
Yep.
of souls moving into the underworld and
Right.
their whole trial process. That's all.
Yeah.
That's his
all
whole job.
Anubis. It's his whole job. Which is, for those of you that don't know, Egyptian mythology.
Yeah.
And then I've got Charon of Greek mythology.
Yes.
He's
Boatman.
He's the boatman in the underworld that you pay. That is actually why the ancient Greeks and Romans, the mythology is very similar, or the traditions became very similar because the Romans, whatever. I'm not getting into that right now.
Thank you.
People would place drachmas or coins on the eyes
It was to pay the ferryman.
of the deceased people when they were burying them, and it was so they had the money to pay
The ferryman.
the ferryman in the underworld. And
Great
then,
thing.
from a Christian perspective, in my opinion, people may not agree with me. I think Saint Peter is a psychopomp.
Yes.
He's the one at the gate, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
at the gate.
So I'm not saying you two. I'm saying other people may
Right,
not
I know.
agree with me.
That's
but
fine. They can disagree all they want, but
Well,
I
'cause there's-
agree
There's
with you.
also
because it's in every people talk about Saint Peter at the gate.
Yeah, St. Peter
With-
at the pearly gates.
At the pearly gates.
Hermes is the god of travelers, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's also a psychopomp.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's the one who actually takes you to Charon.
yes.
Yeah.
Chiron.
The
Charon.
Sharon.
Grim Reaper.
The Grim
Grim
Reaper. Is the
Reaper.
one. I'm surprised you didn't say that one. I
Yeah,
was
no,
like,
I was
when you said
surprised.
3, I was like, we've got Anubis, we've got who are you going with for Greek, and then I went, and then the Grim Reaper, and then
Yeah.
you went Saint Peter, and I was like, no, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking for a couple of different
Specific belief systems.
systems.
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
The Grim Reaper is a very generic
Yeah.
psychopomp, which is great.
Right.
And again, I think this is one we can definitely dive deeper into in its own episode.
100%.
But I wanted to touch on that, not because it's a type of haunting, but it's another reason people think ghosts exist. It may be somebody that can't pay their psychopomp.
Right.
They don't know how to transition because they didn't have a specific set of beliefs, and they don't know how to transition to the next stage.
Maybe their psychopomp didn't come get them.
Maybe
Lazy psychopath.
Lazy psychopomp.
maybe they were a person that, depending on your religion, if you were not practicing heavily and then you
Right.
thought you were going to be retrieved by your specific psychopomp upon death, and then you weren't for whatever reason, you could be stuck in this in-between space.
Uh-huh.
Some people will say that people being stuck as a soul, like as a ghost,
Uh-huh.
is a form of purgatory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not all Catholics believe that that's true. Some
Hashtag not all
believe,
Catholics.
In Catholicism, people believe purgatory is a different space. You're completely removed from earth.
Right.
Uh-huh.
It's not the same.
It's the waiting room for
I'm
heaven.
talking about
Yeah.
it's the waiting room. So I don't necessarily believe that. I think some people, depending on their belief system, could say that it's being stuck on earth is a form of purgatory.
Right.
Yeah. You're
You're not
heard
Catholic,
this
so.
before.
I'm not. I know I'm not, but I want to be respectful of
Right.
the religion,
Right,
the
right,
belief
right.
systems of people that might be listening to us.
Mhm.
Look at you. So kind.
So, yeah, that's psychopomps, which is in and of itself is not its own haunting type, but I think plays an important role when we're talking about types of hauntings.
Right. I agree.
All right, the next thing I want to talk about is poltergeist activity.
Hell yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Angsty teens.
So the word poltergeist is
Right.
German origin.
Yep.
Polter meaning noise or racket, geist meaning spirit. So it's a noisy ghost.
Noisy ghost.
Noisy.
Which is so funny because I don't associate poltergeist activity with sound.
But I think if you're talking, it says racket,
Oh, okay. So
noise
just, like,
or racket.
just being
and if you're-
annoying.
And if you're
Just, like,
chucking,
tossing
if you're
shit.
chucking stuff around, you're making a racket.
You're making a racket. Causing
so
a ruckus.
Yeah,
in
a ruckus.
occultism, a disembodied spirit or supernatural force credited with certain malicious or disturbing phenomena, such as inexplicable noises, sudden wild movements, or breakage of household items. Poltergeists are also blamed for violent actions, throwing stones or setting fire to clothing and furniture. Such events are said to be sporadic, unpredictable, and often repetitive. According to popular belief, this is from Britannica.
Oh, cool.
According to popular belief, a poltergeist's activity appears to concentrate on a particular member of a family, often an adolescent, its object being harassment or rarely physical harm. When strangers are present, the unusual phenomena often cease. A large portion of those reported to be victimized suffer from hysteria. I hope the camera caught my eye roll.
I do too. I'm so glad we have cameras.
In many instances, the activities attributed to poltergeist have been explained as natural phenomena. E.g., the normal creaking of boards in an old house. And hilariously, Britannica says, see also kobolds, which is a completely different type of entity, which I was like, I'm not seeing kobolds because that's not the same thing.
See also kobolds. Little tiny demons is what kobolds are.
So just to like go re-hit on the major activity of a poltergeist,
Right.
a lot of it, object movement. They are shifting. A lot of times if the people are like, we have a poltergeist, their chairs are being moved. Their
Lots of stacking.
stacking is a really common one for whatever reason.
Stacking a bunch of chairs in a room. Taking books off shelves. Stacking them in the middle of the room. Throwing shit.
Throwing things, moving dishes. They like to ruffle through dishware cabinets.
Rude.
Makes noise.
Makes a lot of noise.
Leave my dishes alone.
It's also oftentimes people will say knocking is the sign of a poltergeist or banging around.
They're noisy.
Interestingly enough, I think this is what the Britannica definition was trying to relay. Most of the times when we have a recorded instance of of poltergeist activity, it is tied to a preteen. Majority of the time, the person affected is a preteen or teenage girl.
Often girls.
Majority of the time, it's a girl.
Yeah. Not always.
Not always, but I would
often.
say 85% of the stories.
Yeah.
Some kind of teenage girl.
Right.
Which some people attribute to
hormones.
To hormones and puberty, which is, I can understand, back to feeding off of energy, intent, those kinds of things. Teenage girls, lovingly, as I was one, tend to be dramatic. And so, and not to say that's not like something horrible to go through. I would not want to be affected by a poltergeist. God. But I can understand where it would be hard for people to believe that a teenage girl is actually like going through something. Because the teenage girls tend to be a lot and dramatic and loud and
said with all of the adoration for every teenage girl listening to this podcast.
Teenage girls be teenage girls.
Look,
do everything you want to do.
Girl, have those emotions, have those
emotions,
feelings. But maybe if you start noticing paranormal activity in your house that didn't used to be there, maybe talk to your parents about going to therapy.
Yeah.
See a psychiatrist.
We say that with every bit of love.
Next, adjacent point, if anybody starts experiencing new paranormal phenomena regularly, like in your home,
go to a psychologist.
Go to therapy first.
Go to therapy.
Like that is likely
psychiatrist, psychologist, something. Go find a therapist before you call a ghost hunter.
Yep.
And then after you go to therapy, call us.
Yeah. After you go
we
to
have
therapy
an email.
and
This
determine that,
podcast is
you're
for weirdos
fine.
@gmail.com.
Yep.
Because back to hauntings are a lot of it has to do with the energy of the person being haunted. If it's a specific person,
right?
If you're in a poor mental state, it is much easier for you to believe you're being haunted or influenced or whatever. A lot of, I'm going to get into it later because I'm going to talk about demonic activity. I personally think a lot of demonic activity is people that are having mental health crises.
Right. A lot of exorcisms are not performed on people who are possessed. They're performed on people who
are
need to go to therapy.
who need
and they need
who
a
need to see
psychiatrist.
who need to see a doctor,
Need
not
to see a
People who
physician.
do not need to see a priest.
Not psychic.
Psychiatric
Psychological. Yes, psychiatric help.
and probably need to be medicated.
Same thing with
At
poltergeists.
least for a little while.
Not to say that there can't be another cause, but
Get help.
get help.
Unchecked emotions can
Cause a lot of problems.
And again,
leave
like we said,
shit.
often it is teenage girls.
who
Often.
have a lot of unchecked emotions.
Not always.
Not
Poltergeist
always.
activity can happen to anybody. It is just often in those
Can
little...
happen to adults, can happen to men.
Can happen to men, can happen to little kids, can happen to old people. It can
Yep.
happen to anybody.
Anybody who is having big
feelings.
consistent feelings.
Big feelings all the time.
Yeah. So, I have an interesting little article.
Okay.
I'm ready.
From about poltergeists,
Oh.
specifically about the Seaford poltergeist, which is the poltergeist case that inspired the 1982 movie Poltergeist.
The movie.
The
Cool.
movie. And this is a really fun thing that I found that I was really excited about as a source.
Hell yeah.
It is from the Eileen J. Garrett Parapsychology Foundation digital exhibition from the University of Maryland. It's UMBC. I don't remember the BC. It's something like
British Columbia?
No, it's
University of Maryland something college.
Wait,
Oh, here it is. I'm stupid. Baltimore County. University of Maryland.
Oh, that makes
Baltimore
sense.
Baltimore County. It's in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay. This is the most famous poltergeist story. One of the most. It was from February 3rd to March 10th, 1958. The Herman family of Seaford, New York, experienced unusual phenomena. Mysteriously opened bottles, an exploding bowl of sugar, an overturned bookcase, loud noises, and flying objects.
Crazy.
And let me just, since we just did that PSA about teenage girls, just because it's technically tied to one person does not mean an entire family can't be affected. Once the haunting is started,
It affects everybody.
it's gonna
fuck up your house.
So, just
It doesn't care whose chair that is. It's gonna stack it in the kitchen.
this lady, Eileen Garrett, she was a parapsychologist. Like, she's an early parapsychologist.
That's really
Which is iconic. And this is like it's her foundation. So this university has this whole digital collection on all of these.
Like of all of her shit.
There's the tabs they've got on this. What is parapsychology? Spiritualism, mediumship, ghosts and spirits, other curiosities. Like,
Other curiosities.
they've got they've got shit everywhere. So anyway, I'm gonna read a little bit of this. So I'm gonna read kind of their blurbs, and then I'll read some of the articles. Okay, this is my favorite. So the headline, it says, Mystery in L.I. House Deepens. Family, experts, police stumped.
Family, experts, police.
By
Stumped.
Milton Bracker.
Ooh.
Like, what a name.
Milton.
I like the name Milton.
I have a man that I don't like whose name is Milton, so I struggle with that name.
That's fair.
Seaford, Long Island, March 3rd. The case of the Herman house is a month old today. Last night, after 4 days of quiescence, it kicked up again. The case remains a whodunit without a crime, a criminal, or a solution.
A whodunit without a crime, a criminal, or a solution.
I feel
don't
like
know
it
why
has
that's
to
so
be
funny.
like that tonality. But it has a very tangible scene, a quantity of evidence, smashed or damaged householdware, and a frustrated detective. It also has had many specialized private investigators. They've brought equipment ranging from an electronic vibration detector to a willow dowsing stick. They have gone away without firm conclusions, although the water diviner thinks he's on the right track. The remarkable thing about the phenomenon is no matter how unusual it may seem in 1958, it is closely in line with the poltergeist literature going back 1,600 years. A poltergeist is a noisy spirit associated with the misbehavior of objects. The Herman house is a carefully kept, white-trimmed green ranch model at 1648 Redwood Path here. I don't know if this house exists.
I love how they still like. They're like, we're gonna give you the full address in this
Don't go
newspaper.
looking for it.
They're like, let's go.
Outside and in, it would appear to be a symbol of orderly suburban family life. There is a father nearing 43, a mother who is a registered nurse, a daughter 13, and a son 12. There are a television set, a playroom, and a dinette made cheerful by the bright lilies on the wallpaper.
This is the 50s.
This is 1958.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
I like that.
they
that
had a
we don't.
Roman Catholic. The police have gone out to the house. I'm gonna just skim it. I just really liked the wording of this newspaper article for a little bit.
Yeah.
The police had been called. A Roman Catholic priest came on request to bless the house. And the chimney was capped with a revolving device to keep out mischievous drafts.
Well,
Not a mischievous draft.
So they have the wife calls the husband while he's in Manhattan, 35 miles away. And she calls him and she says, "Jimmy, what's going on?" And I say, "How do I know? I'm 35 miles away." She says, "All the bottles in the house are blowing their tops." Between 3 and 5 p.m., 6 screw top bottles, one for holy water, had opened and fallen over and spilled in 4 rooms.
The holy water?
The other substances were nail polish mover, peroxide, rubbing alcohol, liquid starch, and bleach.
Oh,
Both
God.
children were home with their mother. Nothing happened the next 2 days. And then February 6th and 7th, 2 bottles slid off the bathroom ledge in paths at right angles to each other, landing at the feet of Jimmy, who was brushing his teeth.
Okay, so the right angles thing is important because that means that it's not just like a tilty counter situation.
Yes.
That's why they specified that. It's like, this isn't just an unlevel counter.
And then the same day, a shampoo bottle on Mrs. Herman's vanity table did its usual act, popping its top. Contacted the police. The detective is stumped. The detective he was working closely with a parapsychologist from Duke University on this case. And then it says, moreover, he has taken a good deal of ribbing from his colleagues.
oh,
Then it says the incident of the sugar bowl.
The incident of the sugar bowl. That sounds like a Sherlock Holmes novel.
it really does.
On the evening of the 20th, the detective was in the Herman living room completing some notes. Earlier, he had deliberately placed a full sugar bowl near a corner of a table in the adjoining dinette. Jimmy Herman, a bright, brown-eyed honor student at Seaford Junior Senior High School,
He's 12. I don't care that he's an honor student. He's 12.
was doing homework at the end of the table, furthest from the bowl. All at once, it exploded, as Mrs. Herman put it, and it landed in the hall and showered grains all over.
What a mess.
Detective Tozzi phoned his chief. He said there was no doubt the incident had occurred and that in his opinion, in view of the time and distance factors involved, no hand to touch the bowl. Asked about it, Jimmy simply said, "I heard the noise." Idiot 12-year-old.
I'm 12. I'm 12 and an honor student. I heard it. That's all I can say.
The weirdest was to come. On the night of the 24th, Dave Kahn, a reporter for Newsday, was alone in the living room at 9 p.m. Alone in the living room. At 9 p.m., he was reading on a chair chosen specifically so that his eyes would be in a direct line with Jimmy's darkened room. I think it seems like this was attached to the sun.
Right. The uncle one.
The 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Suddenly, a 10-inch geographic globe, ordinarily on top of a metal rod bookcase at the far side of Jimmy's room, hurtled across the hall. It landed in the living room across from where Mr. Kahn sat. The reporter rushed across the hall, flipped on the light. The kid was like groggy as shit, and he's like, "I heard something."
The kid was like, what was that noise?
And then the next day, the statuette of the Virgin Mary flew from the dresser top in the Herman bedroom.
I believe.
So anyway, this case was very popular. and it talks about, harmful stereotypes because it was the 50s and
Right.
people were shitty. And this article title is, hang on, I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. 1680 Devil Worship. Bottle popping blamed on Indians.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Basically,
Ay.
they were saying that because of the area that the house was in,
It's an Indian burial ground.
it was they basically, the Massapequas would do religious rites, including that basically it was the vibrations of unceasing and unearthly drum beats. It's just basically being shitty about blaming. What does this say? It says theories about the Seaford poltergeist drew from beliefs and interests of the time, some of which are recognized as especially offensive and incorrect today. The article pictured below uses language that perpetuates harmful stereotypes that were used by European colonizers to justify the theft of land from and murder of indigenous peoples.
Great.
Uh-huh.
Amazing.
So
yeah,
anyway.
because it's the white people urge to blame anyone who isn't white for the weird shit happening in your house and not your 12-year-old child who's going through it.
Yeah.
You're making your 12-year-old be an
So-
honor student. Maybe that's why you have a ghost.
In the
Yeah.
50s.
In the fucking 50s, you have a 12-year-old honor student.
I think, and then once the 1982 movie Poltergeist came out, I think it perpetuated people automatically assuming that any activity that involves the movement of objects or knocking or anything like that to inherently be a poltergeist.
Right.
Not always the case. We're about
Right.
the next haunting we're talking about is intelligent spirits. Some intelligent spirits behave in similar to a poltergeist manner for different reasons.
Right, and then like knocking and banging and stuff could also be a residual haunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the major, I would say the biggest difference with poltergeists is constant movement of shit
Yeah.
and generally somebody in the household who's going through a heavily like a very emotion heavy period of their life.
They're going through a lot of
Right.
emotional
A lot of emotional
turbulence.
changes and stuff like frequently.
Can I talk about an example that happened on Ghost Hunters?
Yes, absolutely.
So I watched an episode with my mom recently. So we just started watching the like newest seasons of Ghost Hunters, and there was an episode where they went to this woman's house, and it was a woman and her husband, and they were trying to sell the property, and they were having a bunch of like poltergeisty activity at the house, and she was really worried that if a new family moved in, that they were gonna have problems when they moved in. Like she was genuinely just being like, I'm really concerned because of the stuff that we experienced that someone else is going to experience stuff. Can you guys come do an investigation? And so they talk to her, and they find out that when they first moved into this house, she was going through a divorce, like just finalized a divorce, or had like just gone through a divorce and was getting remarried. Like it was a very tumultuous emotional time with that. Her kids were like at a transitionary time, and they all like were joining two families together, moved into this house. And they were like, it's really weird because they did the investigation on the first night and they had nothing happen. So the second night they bring her in and they all start having shit happen. They take her out and they don't have anything else.
Yeah.
So this like grown ass woman who's in her like 40s was causing poltergeist activity. And so at the end, when they did the reveal, the results at the end of the episode, they were like, hey, so while you were in the house, this is all the weird shit that we got. While you were not in the house, we got
Nothing.
nada. Like not a thing. Not a single thing happened in that house whenever she wasn't in it. And they were like, so we think that because of the energy that you were bringing into this house when you first moved in, that's what caused the initial activity. And then your fear of that activity continued to feed that poltergeist sort of situation. So when we brought you in, immediately it started back up because you're having that same fear and everything of this poltergeist activity. So it's also kind of both a poltergeist and a residual haunting. Like the original haunting was a poltergeist, and then the trigger that caused the residual, I guess, to start back up was her coming back into the house, which she hadn't been in like 4 years.
And
Oh, wow.
They had moved out and they couldn't sell it.
Some
It may not have been that long.
I would
It may
say
been like a year.
I would say poltergeists are kind of in between.
Right.
they're not like they're somewhat of an intelligent haunting. They're also somewhat of a residual haunting.
I would say that they're intelligent in that they do stuff that's annoying, but you
Yes.
can't interact with them.
No.
Like usually you can't get a poltergeist to respond to you, but
The-
it will do stuff specifically to
To
get
bother
your
you.
attention and to
Yes.
bother you.
Yeah.
Let's talk intelligent spirits. So 99% of the time, if you're watching paranormal television and they're catching an EVP or they're talking to somebody in an Estes method session or they're using another database device, they're using a REM pod, anything that requires interaction, you're talking about an intelligent spirit and an intelligent haunting.
Right.
Okay? So intelligence hauntings are a type of paranormal phenomena categorized by the presence of a conscious and interactive entity or spirit. Unlike residual hauntings, intelligent spirits or intelligent hauntings involve entities that can interact with the living and respond to their environment. So some key features of intelligent hauntings. We've got consciousness and intent. So entities involved in intelligent hauntings are believed to possess consciousness and intent. They are aware of their surroundings and can interact with the living. So at the ranch investigation, which we'll talk about
There will be an
more.
episode about it.
There's
we
going to be a
promise.
whole episode about it.
We promise.
We had
Next year.
Next year, probably.
LOL. We had there's some very distinct intelligent spirits on that property.
Correct.
Mhm.
And we had interactions with those spirits. So those are the spirits like or if you watched our episode 3 about the Estes method, when we're talking about the foreman,
The foreman is an intelligent
that's an intelligent spirit.
Uh-huh.
Somebody that's going to
Someone
talk
that
to
can
us
tell you their name.
and is actively responding to questions and is not just repeating the same thing
Right.
over and over, and not in the George Ranch investigation. We had a repetitive Estes method.
We did a
but that-
repetitive Estes method,
had
but
a
it was
couple of
intelligently
them.
but
responding.
it was doing it on purpose.
We had two
We had 2,
because we had
Apple pizza and Chris.
Apple Pizza and Chris.
but both of those were intentional.
They were intentionally repeating themselves
Yeah.
because
To
they
be
wanted something
ridiculous.
specific from us.
Mhm.
So another big part of intelligent hauntings is communication. So that's a whole. There's a lot of forms that communication can show, whether it's EVPs. Sometimes we see a physical manifestation. Physical manifestations in various ways. Interactions through a medium, which is fine. That
Mackenzie doesn't like mediums.
it's not true. I struggle with
Mackenzie
mediums.
really struggles with mediums.
It's probably the type of spiritualism I struggle with the most, I think. And the Estes method is a form of communication. We like to talk about, like we said in that episode, kind of a form of channeling, which is in some ways similar to what a medium should be doing.
Mackenzie's, I'm gonna speak for her because I do know this. We've talked about it a lot. Mackenzie's struggle with mediumship is the inherent ability for mediums to take advantage of vulnerable people
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
are grieving and sad. And that makes it hard when there are a lot of fraudsters out there who are doing
Hurting people.
hurting people and trying to make a quick buck, that it makes it hard. And I'm sure that the legit mediums out there feel the same.
I would hope
of
so.
like, wow, it's really hard for us to like do our job when there are these people out there just trying to
Yeah.
make money talking to your dead Aunt Sally or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the issue that Mackenzie has with mediumship. And she never really wants to talk about it because she doesn't want to sound like a paranormal person who doesn't believe in communication
Shitty.
with the dead. Because we're not like, when Mackenzie says she has an issue with mediums, she doesn't think I know that you don't mean you have an issue with being able to communicate with people who have
no.
crossed over. It's specifically with
The capitalization
the
of
capital
emotion.
M mediums.
Yes.
Not mediumship,
No.
not psychic ability, none of that.
Mediums.
Specifically capital M mediums who market themselves as mediums.
Like the
Either-
Long Island medium, full of shit. I think she's a
A
crock of
fraud.
shit. I think she's a fraud.
The Long Island medium. I've never watched that, so I don't know.
If I ever I'd love to meet a for real medium that means well and has good intentions.
I have two favorite
Chip
mediums.
Coffee is a fine human being.
I love him.
I accept I love Chip Coffee. I love kindred spirits. I know Amy and Adam would never allow fraud ship like that in a show that they are
Part of.
part
That's
of.
their baby. That shows their baby.
So like again,
It's
not
their
all
son.
mediums.
Right.
It's not
Hashtag
the,
not all mediums.
Hashtag not all mediums.
It's not the ability that I have the issue with. It is the consumerism, capitalism, marketing
Of
of
mediumship.
mediumship
Of people being mediums.
that I have an issue. Response to stimuli. That's the activity of like trigger objects. That's for an intelligent spirit. So children that like toys, like the Titanic Museum, they've had a lot of child hauntings or child spirits that have shown up at that museum.
At the Titanic Museum?
The Titanic
Okay.
Museum.
I was just making sure I heard what you said.
And so sometimes investigators will leave toys
Yeah.
or candy,
Mm-hmm.
things that will
Trigger objects.
trigger objects. Persistent presence. Intelligent spirits are always in that location. They don't doodle bop around. They're in that whatever space, whatever location that is, they're going to be there.
Yeah.
So whether that's for unfinished business, a trauma activity, a living person. So like your ghost hunters episode that you talked about with that you watched with Dawn and Betty.
Right, yes.
That could be an intelligent spirit tied to a person. Or a strong emotional attachment to something that's there,
Right.
whatever. So sometimes that's an intelligent spirit could also, like I mentioned, the type of haunting that is like you died and you don't know that you died.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very common intelligent haunting that's like, what do you mean I'm dead? Like
Right.
that's which
Like the movie Ghost.
like the movie Ghost. So I could give you hundreds and hundreds of examples of intelligent spirits.
Yeah.
We're gonna, if you watched, like I said, you watched our Estes Method episode, we're probably gonna do another investigation episode where you're gonna see more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Any amount of paranormal television that you watch, whether
Right.
it's super good or not, that's still an intelligent spirit at that location doing some kind of interaction.
If something responds, that's an intelligent haunting.
So, and like we said earlier, they can be in the same space as a residual haunting. So
Correct.
So you could be, let's say you're at Waverly Hills, and
Right.
you're hearing the beep of a heart monitor, or
And
not there, but like you're hearing coughing
You're
and
hearing
labored
coughing.
breathing, but maybe you're able to talk to a doctor or a nurse.
Right. Or
Um,
like they they get Timmy to play with a ball there,
Yeah.
but you're also going to hear like doors slamming and breathing and coughing and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thing where, like we said, you can have a multi-interactional, multi-spirit interaction.
Right.
And intelligent spirits can be nice.
Right.
They can be not nice. And not nice does not inherently mean evil. They could have been a bad person.
Right. Maybe they were a dick in life,
and
Yeah.
they're just an
and
asshole.
now they're a dick in death.
Like they're an asshole in death, and they want to be rude to you. Cool.
Asshole in life,
That does-
asshole
hashtag
in
dick
death.
in death.
They could be just a shitty person, and that doesn't mean that they're an evil spirit. That doesn't mean they're a demon. Shitty people can be shitty ghosts.
Iconic.
So, variability, another big part of an intelligent spirit is the behavior is very variable. Sometimes they can just be vibing and helpful, and sometimes they want to just be crazy and disruptive, like we talked about, dick and death. Like,
Dick in death.
the nature of the entity and its interactions can depend on a lot of factors, including the kind of person you were when you were alive and how you died.
Right.
Like, if you died in a really traumatic way, you may be just a fucking asshole. Because
Maybe
you're
you're mad about it.
Yeah.
Which is that same, like, unfinished
Or what if you died in a
business.
really stupid way?
And you're like, what the fuck?
You're like, really? This is. Oh, I'm mad.
And sometimes I wouldn't say we have never experienced this, but like paranormal TV shows can sometimes, you can see it corrected. Sometimes they can correct the behavior of an intelligent spirit.
Right. If they go like, "Hey, bud, do you know that you're hurting people?
Like,
Do you know that the things
it's
that
not
you're
like
doing are causing
it's
people
not.
Do you
harm?
realize you live in this person's house and you're not paying rent?
Yeah.
Do you realize you're dead in this person's
Which
house
is
and they live in
also-
this house?"
And also, that's why various types of people can have different kinds of interactions with the same spirit. So some gross man spirits want to get all fondly with women, and which another residual liminal space that I forgot to mention earlier, but this happens a lot, that sometimes has a residual like yucky spirit too. Bars or old like brothels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anywhere that there was like sex work.
Right.
Yeah.
Can be a very like weirdly intelligent residual combo space. So also the biggest difference between residual and intelligent spirits is you can investigate an intelligent spirit. That's
Right.
what you're documenting with paranormal investigation.
Right.
That's who you're talking to, like we've said over and over again. And also, it's the easiest to confirm that with historical research. It's the easiest to confirm an intelligent haunting based on pre-done research.
Right. 'Cause that's where
Or-
you're gonna get a name or that kind of stuff.
Or if you know what you got in your investigation, you can compare to when you're doing research. You should always, do you see me, camera? You should always
She's looking down the barrel.
do historical research before you just go guns blazing into a paranormal investigation. Because then, if there is something could be dangerous, a spirit that doesn't like a certain kind of person, that doesn't like a certain kind of language, that's important to know before you go into the room. And also, then you generally know who you could be talking to, and you're not making shit up on the fly and sound like an idiot. We're going to talk about demonic activity because we have to, not because I want to.
That's okay. You're allowed, and it is an important thing to talk about because we are here
Okay.
to tell
This-
stories. Mackenzie got real serious, guys.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You're allowed.
So, this definition is that demons are entities that never had a mortal human form. Based on the way that it works, is they would be considered extraterrestrials or ultra-terrestrials.
Right.
Demons, generally, what people are talking about when they're talking about demons is a Judeo-Christian religious being.
Entity.
And that's important.
Right.
Because there aren't possession. If you're talking about The Conjuring or The Exorcist or whatever, you are talking about a Christian religious based
Right.
being,
Entity. Yeah.
entity. So demons are fallen angels that disobeyed God and therefore got sent to hell or sent to earth or whatever. Depends on the translation of the Bible that you're talking about.
Thrown out of heaven.
Thrown out of heaven. So, so basically, if you're saying inherently, the word extraterrestrial just means beyond Earth.
Right.
So any kind of God, regardless of religion, any kind of godly being, spiritual being, could be based on the definition of the word extraterrestrial. That is what that is. It does not
Right.
mean alien. Does not mean
Doesn't mean a
little
gray.
green man.
Doesn't mean that guy.
Yeah, it
I don't
means
know if we can see that guy in any of the pictures, but that guy.
it
yeah, my camera.
it means a being beyond Earth.
Right.
That's all it means.
Extra, meaning other than or out of.
Terrestrial,
Terrestrial, meaning Earth.
Okay. So demons are basically pure energy entities. They don't have a physical form to an extent.
They were never a human.
They were never human.
Mm-hmm.
You're not dealing with Joe Bob from down the street.
They're described per this source that I used. I'm not getting. I could Bible dive. I'm not interested in Bible diving.
I'm proud of you.
So, Some people claim demons are beautiful, and that's why they can convince people to do bad things or whatever they're looking to do.
They're babes.
They're really hot.
Why do you think we have tieflings?
Yeah.
I play D&D.
I mean, if you look at the TV show Lucifer, which is a version,
Yeah.
He's a
he's
babe.
hot. Like
Have you seen David Tennant?
David Tennant
Babe.
is hot in
He's a demon.
in what is
Good
the-
Omens.
Thank you. Demons in Supernatural, generally hot people, right? Or portray attractiveness
Right.
Yeah.
and are ugly inside.
Because they're demons.
Sometimes they're, if you're talking about showing your true self, they're scary looking and evil and, you know, big horns or whatever. You know, like your classic, like, I don't know.
They're red and they have pointy horns and they carry a pitchfork
And they
You
pointy
know,
tail.
and they go.
Do they?
some
Wushu?
a lot of people
I
will
don't do that
say
tongue thing.
a lot of people say that for demonic hauntings, the demon is a black mist, a fog, a shadow that follows a person, or like people that are like the cartoon version of like it going up their nose or, you know,
Oh,
into
right.
an orifice.
People would probably could probably say that the creeper from Waverly Hills could be considered a
Could be
demon
Yeah.
considered a demon.
because it is terrifying and crawly and
It's
weird.
spooky.
A lot of times demons, people will say demonic hauntings will disguise themselves as something else. So a lot of times they say children. Oh, we get this kid that likes to come and play, but it's always accompanied with a really bad
Vibe.
feeling.
Yucky vibe, stinky smell, those kinds of
And
things.
it can be people will say that's a demonic haunting in disguise.
Feedback.
A demon, and this is not to say demonic hauntings can happen and have happened.
Yes.
I'm not saying they don't ever happen. They have and they will. It's not something that is inevitable, like whatever.
And all that really means is that there is a non-human entity haunting a location. Non-human, non-animal entity haunting a location.
And what I will say is demons also usually cause the most physical harm, or a demonic haunting tends to cause most intelligent hauntings. And that's in the form of, people, paranormal television classifies demons in like 3 basic ways. You've got knocking, scratches, and usually some form of emotional manipulation or temperature manipulation. And
if
it's
you watch Ghost Adventures, Zach Bagans get possessed about once a month.
yeah, honestly. And the knocking and the scratches are usually done in 3s, which is a mocking of the Trinity. Again, we're going back to this specific discussion of demonic entities is from a Judeo-Christian background of belief.
If you're wondering why all of us are like rolling our eyes and looking disgusted, when like Chris is doing it because he's a recovering Catholic. I'm looking down the barrel of my camera when I say this. I was raised Presbyterian. Mackenzie is a pastor's kid. Mackenzie is not saying this from a disgust of Judeo-Christian belief. We are all disgusted because the reason that this exists is because of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Who took
Public enemies
Public
number
enemies
one.
number
who
one
took
and
advantage
2,
of people that they shouldn't have.
and convinced these people that they were being haunted and possessed by demons.
Now, I believe that priests that choose to become exorcists, there is a religious belief structure that is accurate for why you would become an exorcist, why we believe there are demons in
Right.
religion.
I'm not saying that there are not demons. I am saying that Ed and Lorraine Warren are the reason why demons are
And
prevalent
also,
in paranormal
I'm sorry,
belief
Yep.
right now. And why
Back
Zach
to my-
Bagans says that every house is a portal to hell.
one, if you read the Bible, whether you read it as a research point or because you believe in it, it is explicit in how demons can hurt you. And also, I'm sorry, Jesus never banished a fucking portal to hell, because that's not a thing. Back to psychopomps, most belief structures require a secondary person to get you where you're going.
So there can't be a portal to hell.
So
Yep.
I'm sorry, you can't drop me out of the floor and send me to the ninth circle. That's not a fucking thing.
Send Me to the Ninth Circle was the name of my band in high school. There's so many good ones.
My earlier PSA about demonic activity, most people that think they're being possessed
are having
a mental health crisis. And I'm not saying that. There are dedicated cases where I truly think there was
something spiritual
actual spiritual possession occurring. And I think there are exorcisms that are true and happened the way that they were supposed to by the people who were supposed to do them. And most of the time, demons, if you're talking about an exorcism, because their energy, they're going to be banished, but that just means they're either being dispersed, they're likely to come back. A demonic haunting is hard. Again, it requires really specific. An exorcism is not easy to complete. To become an exorcist, you have to go through years and years of religious training to be able to do that activity. A laying of hands is not going to fix that. Like, it's not something the lay person can fix.
I just pictured someone doing an exorcism, but it's like putting their hand on someone's hand and head and going homina 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 homina.
So anyway, I
exercise
the demons. And again,
I don't have a treadmill.
we're great.
I can go to the gym maybe.
I hate
So again, demons classified mostly by causing some kind of physical and emotional harm to the person, or emotional in the manipulation of causing them to hurt themselves.
Right.
I will say that that's a very common issue with people that believe they're being possessed. Back to, if you think you're being possessed and you are not a spiritual person to begin with, you should go see a doctor.
A physician of some kind.
Because you may be having an unknown mental health crisis.
And if you are spiritual, go see your spiritual director.
Go see,
go see your priest.
Go see your priest.
pastor.
Go
your rabbi.
and
your whoever.
also maybe do both.
Do
maybe
both.
Also
Do both.
see a doctor.
I
¿Por
was
qué
gonna
no
say
los
something- I was going to say something about that.
tres?
Yeah, ¿por qué no los dos always? Like, involve a medical professional and also go talk to your spiritual professional.
Do not call
Zach Bagans.
Zach Bagans, but do not call a paranormal investigator when you think you have a possession. If you truly think you're being possessed by a demon, go to
Go
your
to a representative of the health department and a representative of the Lord.
Of the Lord, please. As
Whichever
somebody,
whatever
Lord.
your Lord is.
let's talk about shadow people.
Hell yeah.
Fuck
'Cause
yeah.
I'm done talking about demons. So shadow people are different than demons. I'm gonna say that's a two very distinct. There's a reason we're talking about them separately, because they are inherently different.
Right.
So a shadow person, a shadow figure, there's a couple of different shadow terms people use for them, is the outline of a person, but you're going to see them like they're standing in front of you. You're going to see most of a body. Like, you're going to clearly tell that this is a person of some kind.
But what about like the creeper?
Sometimes people can consider a shadow figure a demonic presence, but they are not
I think
inherent.
the creeper is a separate thing from being a shadow figure.
Okay.
I would because it's described as like being spider-like, non-humanoid, like it's
Shadow
a non-human entity. I wouldn't classify it under shadow figures. I would classify it under probably demons.
Okay.
I don't think
Interesting.
that it's like a classic like my name is Beelzebub and I am here from hell. I was sent to hell by the Lord your God. I don't think it's that kind of demon. I think it's a just like non-human, non-animal, like non-previously corporeal entities energy. I think that it is a other energy.
Uh-huh.
Because I think that shadow figures, in my opinion on shadow figures, before
different.
Mackenzie even gets to them, I think shadow figures are a kind of intelligent haunting.
Yes.
They're for me, shadow figures are a form of a full-bodied apparition
Mhm.
that just doesn't have the ability to present features.
Okay.
'Cause I think shadows are easier because it's a lack of light
Uh-huh.
than projecting their
Light.
whole self.
Yeah.
So sometimes people can consider them demonic. I generally don't.
Right.
I think that's
You think that they're separate?
I the main reason I think that they're separate is if we're going with demons never really had a true humanoid form,
Right.
and their energy interpretation is generally more mist-like. I think it would have to be a higher level demon for
If
it to
you
really
were
be
never
presenting
a
up.
human, why are you presenting yourself to me in a human form?
Yeah,
Other than to be shitty. But
shitty
like,
and scary. Yeah. Interestingly, some people say that shadow figures could be ultra terrestrials traveling between dimensions.
that's cool. So we're just seeing
That fucks.
So are we literally just seeing like their shadow on our dimension, like as they're passing over it, kind of vibe?
Passing through, which is why you
That's
can
cool.
which is why I agree that they're semi-intelligent, where you
Right.
can sometimes interact with them, and sometimes it's literally the peripheral vision. It's blink and gone.
It's like the shadow figure that I saw. I don't think it was an ultra-terrestrial. I think it was just a
No,
ghost.
no.
But no, I do agree with that, and with the semi-intelligent thing, because the shadow figure that I saw looked at me, and I looked at it, and then it fucked off. Like, it
Well,
was one
and
of those, like, I don't want to be here anymore, bye.
I think a lot of shadow figures, I've seen them caught on camera by more
Right.
than one paranormal investigation group.
Mm-hmm.
They're scary as shit. Seeing them when you don't know what you're looking at is very disconcerting.
Right.
They are not inherently bad things.
It's
It's very scary from a my brain cannot
Once
logic
again,
this.
we're talking about the difference
The
between
fear.
scary and harmful.
Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
uncanny valley type
Yes.
of fear.
Horrifying.
It's like this is an intrinsic fear
Like,
that
why-
we have of like
yeah.
because it is uncanny valley because shadows are attached to something.
Yeah, and you're not
What
seeing
is
whatever.
casting that shadow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some places I cannot remember which TV show or what episode. I know at a different hospital there was the shadow figure of a 7 foot tall man,
Oh yeah.
and he was a very polite, kind spirit. He
Yeah.
just was able to full body, like you said, it's a full body apparition. It's a form of It's a form of intelligent haunting, to an extent. Go ahead.
My favorite ever shadow figure that's ever been caught. Josh Gates. Anyway, Josh Gates. His original show that he had was called Destination Truth. Now he has
3 different shows.
right. The main one is
Expedition Unknown.
Expedition Unknown. Thank you. So Destination Truth, he did like paranormal encrypted stuff for
Yeah.
the most part.
Uh-huh.
And there was
Yeah.
an episode where he went to the Aokigahara forest in Japan. And
Yes.
they, thank God, if you know anything about the Aokigahara
So
forest,
scary.
we might cover it at some point. It's also known as the Suicide Forest for obvious reasons by the name. They were really respectful when they went. And one of their cameras that they had, they caught this when they were looking back at footage.
Uh-huh.
So they didn't see it in real time. It was a later situation. They had a static camera just kind of pointing down the trail that they walked into the forest. And they see from behind a log a shadow figure the size of Josh, roughly, like a human-sized shadow figure from behind a log, stand up, look down the barrel of the camera, essentially, and then just, melt back behind the log. And the way that their cameras work, because they have night vision cameras, people are, bright white.
Yeah.
Human people are,
Yeah.
bright
If
white
you've
on
ever watched an IR
cameras.
camera, that's why a lot of paranormal investigators wear black. It's to
'cause
help
you're-
balance the colors.
Right, you're, it's bright white on there.
If you wear color, it's hard to tell who you are.
Yeah. So, that's why it's oh, this is a shadow figure, not a person. There's not a guy in the woods that just stood up and looked at them.
So there is people call him a shadow figure. He's a common, what you would call a sleep paralysis demon, and it is the Hat Man.
Oh my God, I should have worn that shirt.
The distinct difference between the Hat Man and your general finding of a shadow figure, the Hat Man specifically usually shows up in a dream while
he has
you're
a hat.
having a sleep paralysis activity, and also
It's a drug-induced hallucination.
Yes. It is-
sleep paralysis. What did you just say?
Benadryl demon.
No, what did you just say? You said sleep paralysis
Demon?
situation, I believe.
Activity.
Activity. Sleep
Activity.
paralysis activity. That's the name of my band from high school.
But the difference is the Hat Man usually has red eyes, and that has to do
Yeah.
with
Like you can usually see a facial feature of the Hat Man, and it's spooky red. Is he Mothman?
But anyway, the Hat
Zoom
Man
in on my
again
face.
is historically medicine induced. So Benadryl, other sleep medications that are not just melatonin, like NyQuil, things that fuck with your brain a little bit.
I've never had sleep paralysis.
Neither have
neither.
I.
I kind of want to.
I don't. I have one thing left to talk about,
Okay.
and it is portals. Which-
To hell?
No, fuck you. So portals are not necessarily a new concept. We see them all the time in media, right? Sci-fi, all kinds of things. Portals are not an uncommon thing.
There's like a whole video game just called Portal.
Yeah, so portal hauntings are kind of controversial because most people think that if there's going to be a portal, you're going to hell. It's not the case. Remember, a portal is just an opening that goes from one space to another.
Doors are
like
portals.
a doorway. Doors are portals.
Doors are portals.
It's why when you walk through one, you forget what the fuck you're doing in the room you just came
said
into.
Dordle.
So
If there was
a lot of times places that just to a very popular early, I will give them, it's a very early Ghost Adventures episode that they talk about there being a portal is at Bobby Mackey's Music World.
That's the first episode.
It is the first episode of Ghost Adventures. They go back to Bobby Mackey's multiple times, and I will say
Rest in peace, Bobby Mackey's. Doesn't exist anymore.
it does not. What I will say is
Pour one out for Bobby Mackey's.
the portal theory there was substantiated by the owners of that facility, not by the investigators that went there.
Right.
That was already, that part of its lore was there prior to.
Right. Zach Bagans didn't go there and go, there's a portal to hell.
Let
The
me be-
guy who owned it was like, there's a portal to hell in
Yeah,
my
I was
basement.
like, this was not. That was not the investigators, because more than one, a shit ton of paranormal investigators went through Bobby Mackey's, not just the Ghost Adventures crew.
Right. Ghost hunters went there.
Yeah. It can be, portals can be tied to sacred ground a lot of times. It's why people talk about fairy circles or natural
That's a
doorways
portal.
in the woods.
Right.
Those are portals. So there is far more spiritual belief behind a portal. Now, where they take you, don't know. I will say Ghost Adventures did a really cool experiment prior to them being really shitty. I don't know, when I was still interested in watching them. That was a 3-way portal between 3 different destinations. So
Oh, right. Was that the one where they were at the Winchester house?
So they had people at the Winchester house, people at Bobby Mackey's, and there was a third location.
There was
that
a third secret location.
But but the important thing is they were in different time zones,
Right.
and they
Was
got
that one of the Halloween live?
probably no. It was a recorded episode.
It wasn't a
okay.
live one.
It was
And they
when
had to end it early because
Zach's grandma died.
Zach's grandma died.
On the episode, and she crossed through the portal, and he found out
From his grandmother and then called his mom.
and so they had to cut the episode because that's when he found out
That
she-
he found out that his grandma died
Because
from
she-
his grandma.
because she contacted him through the portal that they had created. It was experiment wise. I would watch that again purely
It's-
for the scientific.
It is the
insane
most.
and
It is the most good,
visceral.
good episode of Ghost
It's
Adventures, in my opinion.
It's an insane experiment. Like if it was ever something.
Also, I felt really bad for Zach.
like
Yeah.
like to humanize Zach Bagans, because he's not inherently a bad person. He plays a very
No.
good character. He's not a
Right.
bad person.
And he does genuinely believe what he says.
He does. I think he's got a little bit of some wonky morals in what he chooses to purchase and portray,
Correct.
but he's not inherently a bad person.
No.
And
He's our enemy because of just like
Because
the
we don't-
perpetuation of stereotypes that he
Yes,
does.
he's not. Let me be before I get like a fucking cease and desist letter from
Zach Bagans.
Zach Bagans. I think I spent a lot of years really believing in what he put out. It took a lot of growth for me to grow through that phase, and a lot of research and time and opinions from other people.
Right.
If you're getting into paranormal investigation through a paranormal television show, it's important to, 1, watch other paranormal media, And 2, do your own research.
Yeah.
Both of those things are very important because you can get stuck in the loophole of that specific.
It's very much
paranormal
like
investigation style.
yelling into a vacuum,
Yes.
right?
Like, just to be very clear, when we're talking about either going, how to approach spirits, it's all very personal to the investigator and their investigative style.
Yeah.
So, again, portals, we've never had a portal experience, not to say we couldn't. I think just like a lot of other hauntings, a lot of it has to do with intent. I think you could probably intentionally open a portal and figure something out. And
We
that
can't
may
do
be,
that at my house.
we are not doing that here.
No.
There are so many things we can't do at this house.
But maybe if we were to ever be out doing a different investigation
Right.
somewhere, it could be something we could attempt. I'm sure the episode of Ghost Adventures is somewhere on Discovery Plus or Max. You can find it.
Yeah, probably.
And anyway,
Poor Zach.
tell me. I think we've covered all of my types of hauntings in my notes. I'm sorry to everybody. This is a very chaotic episode.
This was almost like roundtable-esque.
Yeah. Tell me if you learned something, what you thought. You can tell me you didn't learn anything, and that's okay.
No,
too.
I did. I do really like that you separated out shadow figures to their own category because, it can be either or. Are they their own thing? Are they a separate entity? Are they that cool-ass fucking ultra-terrestrial theory? I love that.
Oh, I'm obsessed.
I
with
love
I've
that.
never heard that before.
I love that theory. And then while you were saying that, when we were talking about the uncanny valley thing of shadow figures, I had I said the thing of like shadows have a thing that they're attached to, and
Yeah.
you can't see the thing that's casting that shadow. Maybe that's what we're seeing, is we're just seeing their shadow in our reality
When they're in
while
a
they're
different
traversing through other realities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just their shadow is cast in
Uh-huh.
our realm. So yeah, I also learned how much disdain you have for demons in the paranormal field
Yes.
and the perpetuation of misconceptions surrounding demons in the paranormal field, which I agree with all of your points. I don't disagree with anything that you said. Like, you're right. I think that's it. I also like the idea of poltergeists being kind of betwixt the realm of intelligent haunts and residual haunts, or like
Yeah.
non-intelligent hauntings, because poltergeists are also like associated with that liminality of being between like a child and an adult. So it's cool that they're like between two kinds of hauntings. I just
Yeah.
thought that was kind of neat.
They're very liminal.
Yeah, they're a liminal entity.
What are you, Bubs?
I really appreciated you bringing up the Hat Man, because if you didn't, I was going
I
to.
got you.
Because I think because the Hat Man is having such a moment
Right now.
in like
Pop culture.
Yeah, in the cultural like.
Zeitgeist.
Yeah, thank you. I think I was like, I think it's important
I think he's in the other room.
to note that like he's not a ghost, he is a hallucination.
Specific thing, yeah.
He's a very specific experience that people have.
Yeah.
And like that is not a ghost.
Yeah.
That is a drug-induced hallucination.
Yeah.
It's your sleep paralysis
It's a
demon,
sleep
which
paralysis
is not a
demon.
demon. It's a thing that your brain is making up when
Yeah.
you are in the place between waking and sleeping with your eyes open.
Yeah, and so
you
like
are dreaming but awake.
it is a liminality. It is a state between
Right.
like
Tis-
awake and asleep, and it is something spooky. It, however, is not a ghost, is not a demon, is not.
I think, interestingly enough, I think that I still would like to maybe cover the Hat Man
I would-
as its own episode.
Yeah, I would love to talk more about the Hat Man.
Because of the fact that so many people in their sleep paralysis are seeing the same
The
thing,
same thing.
is really interesting.
It is fascinating. I
So
would
maybe we'll
love
talk
to
about that.
learn more.
Great.
Yeah. So
All right. I think that's not all you need to know about ghosts, but it's good for right now.
it's a good foundation.
I'm really excited to see what we cover next week. Can't wait to see what comes next.
Thanks for listening.
This podcast is for weirdos.
Are you a weirdo?
Thursdays are for the phenomena.